clean, old-fashioned hate. A rivalry that started way back when in 1893, which started out pretty even during the Heisman era, devolved into a sea of red consisting of the dominant Bulldogs and the dried up blood of the Yellow Jackets. The last time Georgia Tech had back-to-back wins was 1999 to 2000, the same year that Y2K and the dot-com bubble was still going on. And the last time they even beat Georgia, more specifically Kirby Smart, was in 2016, the same year that Clemson and Alabama played each other in the national championship and Lamar Jackson won the Heisman at Louisville. This was probably the most underwhelming game that I've seen from Tech this season, not because they performed badly, at least on defense, but because this game only focused on one dude, Georgia running back Nate Frazier. Once again, this game was pretty much every offensive player's worst performance for probably the rest of their time in college, but Frazier, although being the only guy on the field doing anything, had just over 100 yards, no touchdowns, and his longest run in the game was 4 yards. But let's get into the game so you can see for yourself what happened. So Georgia Tech starts out the game with fumbling their own recovery and forcing themselves at the 3-yard line, which by the way could have been a touchback if you just didn't try to go for it. After almost getting safetied, Hayes King does what Hayes King does and throws a great ball downfield for about 30 yards, but then Hayes King does what Hayes King does and gets sacked for about 7 yards, which causes him to be stopped and punt. Then Stockton finally pulls up with his own physical drive, getting about 11 yards himself before getting sacked and then throwing a pick right after that. But it is UGA that Tech is playing right now, and they get stopped at the 20-yard line and make the game 0-3. After that pick last drive, UGA just refused to pass the ball from now on, running on 11 of their 13-play drive, with the other 2 being a combined 1 yard on passing. But they put up enough yards to get close enough for a field goal, tied the game 3-3. Tech gets stopped on a 3-and-out, but then UGA keeps feeding their running back to eventually get to the red zone, and they finally pass the ball to Zachariah Bryant, where he spins away from his man and scores the only touchdown in the game. Tech gets stopped, UGA scores another field goal, King kneels out the half. Even though Georgia is definitely being the more dominant team here, Tech is still playing a good game. All they need right here is just a good stop and then start scoring, which is what Tech does. At least the first part of what I said. Georgia gets stopped, Tech scores another field goal, again, to make it a 1-score game, again, then Georgia scores another field goal, again, to make it a 2-possession game, again, Georgia gets stopped, again, Tech scores another field goal, again, to make it a 1-score game, again, Georgia gets stopped, again, but Tech can't get the score at the end of the game and they lose. Again, this game was somehow the only game in recent memory for Tech where their defense actually locked in, and it was against a top 5 opponent. Problem is that Tech's offense can't do anything for once. The closest they got to the end zone was at the 20-yard line, and after making a 30-yard pass to begin the game from their own 3-yard line after being almost safetied, they never really had any play that did anything similar. The next time they shot downfield, it was a pick, which if it was either caught downfield or just swatted for a 2nd and 10 and they scored later on, they could have tied the game since the next 2 drives was stopping Georgia and getting another field goal. The 2 highest scores in this game were somehow the kickers, Peyton Wording for UGA and Aiden Burr for Tech, which scored a combined 19 of the total 25 points, which means that special teams scored over 3 times more than the rest of the UGA and Tech roster combined. This game is a hurt more than last year's 8 overtime game though for Tech, because all your top talents now leaving like Haynes King, Jamal Haynes, and other dudes. You left it with a severe loss at senior night, and then the very next week you lose your rivalry game, which you couldn't beat 3 times in a row while they were there. Generational talent, bad playmaking. That's pretty much Tech for you. Well, that's all I got for today. Wait, why is Duke in the ACC championship?